Do you and your partner want to learn simple ways to grow closer?
Do you and your partner want to grow happier together?
Do you and your partner want to be a unified front?
Do you and your partner want to divorce-proof your marriage?
If you answer yes to these questions, you need to check out our book, Unlocking Forever, 10 Keys to a Successful Marriage Beyond I Do.
Each section focuses on a different aspect of marriage and briefly describes how we handled it in our relationship. At the end of the section, you're given an action step or key to complete with your partner.
These keys are practical steps you can immediately implement in your relationship and help you and your partner be proactive and intentional about your relationship.
You can purchase your copy on Amazon.com.
And until next time, we will holler at y'all. After over 25 years of marriage, we've learned that successful couples have great friendships, put each other first, and focus on light just as much as love. We believe marriage should be fun and easy.
Our goal is to share our journey with the hopes of helping others build strong, happy relationships. Join us as we continue to create our lives beyond I do.
We are not marriage counselors, nor are we mental health professionals. We're just simply sharing y'all how we navigated through our marriage. Now, on with the show.
Trigger warning. This episode contains a detailed and vivid description of a domestic violence occurrence. Listener discretion is advised, especially for those who may find such content distressing or triggering. Please prioritize your mental health and well-being while listening. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please seek help from a trusted source or contact local authorities.
All right. We'd like to welcome you back to the Beyond I Do podcast. We have a special guest here by the name of Brother Darion Morris. Darion comes to us as an entrepreneur, father of twin boys. He's a domestic violence survivor, mental health advocate. He's a personal chef, specializes in Italian food, desserts, international cuisine.
Thank you for joining us. I don't want to let everybody know everything about me, but the personal chef part is very interesting to me because I love food and I love to eat.
Yes, sir.
But we're not going to stay in that spot. We'll get to that spot later because you are a personal chef by trade, an entrepreneur, and we want to know about the business end. We won't spend too much time talking about the delicious foods. So this year, our goal was to bring on guests to talk to us about different aspects of life, being the best individual you can be. And when we reached out for guests, you filled out the form, we met, and we talked about your survival story. And that was a subject that's close to us. And so we just want to know a little bit about you and about your story and how you gotten to this point.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. Appreciate that. I'm Darion Morris. Again, I'm the founder of Decree of Dominion podcast. I'm highlighting domestic violence survivors as well as mental health. I'm 27 years of age, a single father of twin boys, age 6. They're in kindergarten currently. They'll be in first grade this coming fall. And so I'm actually born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, currently residing in the Indianapolis area for about the past 13 years. Just me and mom and stepdad, and I got a little sister that just graduated college last year at Purdue Fort Wayne. So she's was able to get a job in her field. So she studies psychology. She actually works for the school, one of the high schools up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so a little bit about my story. And so I grew up in a 2-parent household. Parents were married 14 plus years. So ever since I was born, they were married. It was just me and my little sister, Jasmine. She had graduated. That's the one that graduated from Fort Wayne. Again, she's 3 years younger than me. So she's 24, I'm 27. And so Grew up in the home. One of the, like I said, domestic violence surviving is near and dear to my heart, because me and my mom are survivors. So I'll get into a little bit of my backstory. But first, I'll kind of start from my early childhood. And so, growing up, I was always the big kid. I did play sports, but I was always the husky built kid. And so, growing up, just from my father's side, my mom was always a very loving woman. Did grow up Pentecostal, grew up in church. And so, both sides of the family grew up Pentecostal. So my mom, she was that like angel, and like my dad kind of played that devil's advocate role. And so, growing up, my father was always hard on me. I'd speak on a lot of verbal abuse and things of that nature. Growing up, just as a kid, I was always taught that if you didn't do things perfect, that then you just, you were less than.
Right.
And so my mentality, in early childhood was that, if I don't take out the trash or if I don't come home with good grades, I was going to get, back then we got whoopings, with the belt. So I was always, hey, if I brought a C home, it'd be a whooping. If I, broke something in the house playing football or throwing things, it would be a whooping. If I took a snack cake out of the drawer and wasn't supposed to at night, it'd be a whooping in the morning. So I just grew up with that, like scared to fail mentality. And I think it severely affects you as you get into early adulthood. And so early on, my mom was actually over 400 pounds in my early childhood. And so I just remember, just the snark comments like, you a fatty, and, just different comments that my dad would make to her when I was around 4 or 5 years old. My first domestic violence situation I witnessed as a kid, I remember I was 4 years old in kindergarten. It was like a Friday night just after school. I remember going in the kitchen to get some cookies, and I remember my dad pouring a whole gallon of water down my mom's back and punching her in the back.
Oh, wow.
And I was about 4 years old then. Again, my sister was only like one. So, she was still like a newborn baby sleep at the time, luckily. I'm in the crib sleep. And I just remember there used to be an old pizza place in Lexington, Kentucky called Sir Pizza. And all I remember from that time after he had hit her, I just remember her calling the police, and then the police escorting him out with, he had that Sir Pizza box in his hand. And so that was my first real experience with the domestic violence. I grew up in church. He was actually the church drummer. My cousin was the pastor. His mother, my grandmother.
He was
Right.
at the church also. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, he was actually actually still is the drummer. Once he did get out of incarceration, he did go back to the church. So he is currently a church drummer at the same church. But grew up with no drugs or alcohol in the home. And so I always like to mention that because some people ask, with domestic violence, hey, was he a alcoholic? Was he, on drugs? And so I actually never, I didn't even see my first like bottle of beer until I was like 14, like in my grandparents' house, because my grandparents had like a full bar in their basement. So that was my first time even seeing alcohol. And again, never even seen any, cigarettes at all or any tobacco, even in the home. And so from that, like I said, grew up in church. So went through a normal childhood. Early on, my parents didn't really have a lot of money. I remember us at the time we stayed in a little apartment off Regency Road. As I got into the ages around 8, 9, 10 years old, my daddy got a better job with Alltech. They actually run the equestrian games for horse racing down in Kentucky. Okay. And then my mom had a job with a company called Rock 10. And so she was starting to make a lot more money. And so we ended up moving into a little duplex for about a couple of years. And we ended up moving to a real big house, about 5-bedroom house. I had a full basketball court in the back, a full basement, had a toy room, game room with the air hockey table. And so that was like the first time, was able to see money. My mom worked 2-3 jobs. She'd been working since she was 14 years old. Wow. Again, dad was, going back and forth between warehouse jobs at the time. And so at this point, I finally had that like somewhat stability as a child in the home. At this point, everything seemed we had a normal like Christian family, mother, brother, sister, mom, dad, everybody go to church on Sundays, Wednesday night Bible study. your Sunday school 9:30. The normal, typical conservative Pentecostal home. So at the time, there was no, outside of that one time when I was 4, there was no indication of domestic violence, and so it kind of seemed like everything was normal. My mom had started Weight Watchers and lost a lot of weight, and so currently she actually weighs way less than me, and so she was able to lose over 100 plus pounds over a span of 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And so again, at this time, I'm about 10, 12 years old, going into middle school. Everything seemed normal. Like I said, we had 3, 4 cars. And I also like to preface that by saying children in my school, they looked at me and my sister as, oh, they kind of got it all. You got the stable home, go to church. Seemed like, and my dad was one of those dads. He'd get off work at 5 and he let all the kids, all my friends, come over and play outside in the yard, play basketball with us. So, and he'd sometimes come out there and play with us after work. And so, to my friends' eyes and to my sister's friends' eyes, we had it going on. You had the big house, the parents had the cars, and my mom was one of those moms, like, she's very organized. She had the bills, everything documented, spreadsheeted. My mom's very meticulous when it came to articulation. So like I always had not necessarily the most expensive clothes, but my clothes always matched. Like even if she was balling on the budget, she always made sure we were well kept. My sister always had her hair pressed. Back then they used a pressing comb. So my sister always was well kept. And so looking from the outside looking in, you would say, they're pretty, well off family. And so
everything going on.
right. And so I remember when I got in middle school, 7th grade, my great grandmother had passed away. And that's when I kind of saw like a downturn in my parents' marriage. The conversation, this family dinners, you have Sunday dinner, those kind of got, quieter, you're not as energetic. And then moving on from when I was like 12, 13 years old, my parents kind of started talking about separation, talking a little bit about divorce. And so, as a kid, you don't know, you go to church every Sunday, you have the family dinner. We were very active in sports. My mom always had us, in activities. I was in different school. I was in band, orchestra, things like that. So, from a kid, I always thought that, it was normal. And so, I had a lot of friends at school. I was bullied during school. They used to call me Fat Darion. So they used to call me Mr. Snack Cake. And so I was a bigger guy, but I didn't, let it affect me too much from a peer perspective. My most pain was at home. And so just especially now being a father of kids, just like I said, that mentality, always trying to be perfect. And then if you're not perfect, you feel like you're letting yourself and the family down.
Right.
And so I remember one time, it was 7th grade, and I I actually didn't even get a phone call. I remember coming home from school that day, and my mom just sitting on the living room couch, just bawling out, crying. And her whole face, how you get like carpet burn? She had carpet burn on the left side of her face. And then I was, my dad always she worked 3rd shift at the time. So she would always be gone to work by the time we got home. She'd make sure we did our homework, have dinner, and she'd, be headed out the door. But, it was a regular weekday, and she didn't have her work clothes on. She just had a robe on and was, sitting on the couch crying. So, I'm thinking, did somebody pass away? Or I'm thinking it's, like a family emergency. And then she had explained to me that my father had, put his hands on her and, that he was arrested. And so the story from that, she was on the phone with her friend. At this point, they were sleeping in separate rooms. So we had a full guest bedroom in the basement. So she actually let him have the bed upstairs, the master bedroom, and she would sleep downstairs in the basement. And so this specific day, he had came home early, and she was on the phone with one of her best female friends named Kendra. He had assaulted her while she was on the phone, and her friend had hung up and called 911. So he ended up pushing my mom's face into the carpet and rubbing her face back and forth to, create those carpet burns. And so at this point he had got, arrested, got bailed out, taken to my grandmother's house. So at this point, my mom was, set on divorce. It's like, even though it was like the second time it happened, but she was dead set on divorce. He was staying with my grandmother for a while. She began to talk to me and my sister about, about divorce, about the co-parenting, and talking about, who's going to take the house, who's going to do is he going to do weekend visitation, all the different, co-parenting things. And so kind of went through a couple years. And then around 8th grade, he had came back into the home. She ended up, was still set on separation at least. So they had separated for a while. He had came back in the home. She was still dead set on divorce. So, she let him come back in the home to kind of like, talk with us and, live with us for a while until he figured out, his living situation or who, how he was going to go about that.
Right.
From that experience, everything, seemed normal up until the big day was Thanksgiving of 2010. That Thanksgiving, we went over to my Aunt Loretta's house with a normal. Every year, somebody would host Thanksgiving dinner. That's just how we did it as a family.
Right.
Everybody bring a dish. Somebody host. Leading up to that point, my mom had kind of disassociated herself with, with his side of the family because my grandmother and her didn't really get along. Her mom, had unfortunately passed away when I was 2 years old. And then my granddad, he lived in Indiana. So as I get farther into the story, it's actually why we moved to Indiana because my grandfather was here. And so Thanksgiving, me, my sister, my dad went to my Aunt Loretta's house. It's a regular Thanksgiving dinner. My cousins from, Michigan, Ohio, everybody came. And we had a big family. There's about 30 of us or so, plus, watching the football games, doing the normal Thanksgiving tradition, loading up on Aunt Helen's sweet potatoes, got to have the candy yams.
Oh, yeah.
Got to have the mac and cheese. And so it was a normal day. So my cousin who lives Midway, Kentucky, her and my sister about the same age. Looking back, it was definitely a sign from God. She wanted my sister to spend the night with her. They live Midway, Kentucky is about an hour and a half away from Lexington. So we would only see our cousins on Sunday mornings at church. And so, but they were real close. Like we used to have that little Nintendo DS and we used to chat back and forth back before we had cool cell phones. Back then we had the house phone. And so they were real close. And so my dad and my uncle had talked and agreed to let my sister, stay with them. Stay with my uncle and spend the night that night. And so me and my dad, after the dinner was over, about 9 o'clock or so, we headed back home. Normal Thanksgiving. Like I said, dinner, went to bed. I was 14 years old at the time. Remember waking up that morning. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning. Again, I wore glasses / contacts. So obviously when you wake up in the morning, you don't have your contacts in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Black Friday 2010, the morning after Thanksgiving, woke up to my mom screaming my name. Any viewers out there, that has, a good mom in their life or a mom in their life, there's different motherhood screams. There's your, Darion, there's the you're in trouble scream.
Right.
Like what'd you do? You did something wrong at school. There's your, hey, can you come here real quick and hand me the remote scream?
Yes.
But this specific time, it was that like a scream I never heard before.
Oh my God.
It was almost like a scary movie. So, just with my instincts, I jumped up out the bed, ran into the living room where she was at, and I noticed my father hitting her. And so I pushed him off, got him, off of her. She had instructed me to call the police. Back then we had house phones. So we had 3 house phones. We had one downstairs in the basement, one in the kitchen, one in the master bedroom. So I'd obviously, how those houses set up, front door, living room, kitchens, right in front of the living room. So it was just walked right to the kitchen, picked up the house phone, dialed 911, began talking to the operator. At this point, my dad had left her in the living room and walked over to me and grabbed the phone. Like I said, I've only told this story a few times. So any viewers out there that do believe in Christ, and like I said, I'm very strong in Christ, but like I said, if you don't believe in Christ, I suggest you definitely should. The way he was grabbing towards the phone, like, you play video games and especially if you're in church, like those scary movies like Exorcism and different movies like that. He moved. It was like he was like shifted. Like, you know how you do like when you do the suicide drills in basketball where you're going louder, like back, but it was like a quick shift. And I remember, like, I looked in his eyes and like the pupil of his eyes turned black.
Oh, wow.
And that was like, this is, and then like I always tell this, when I tell a story, I always preface this, if you're listening, viewing, you have to understand, this is my father, this is,
Right.
This isn't like a random stranger on the street. This isn't me and my mom at the grocery store trying to get in the car and some stranger comes up and attacks her. This is
look up to.
Right. This is a father. Seeing that, kind of honestly shocked me. And so I remember he tried to swipe at the phone twice, but it's like he's looking past me. So like, he's not even like looking, like he's grabbing at the phone, but he's like grabbing at my hand, like at an angle. He tried 3 times and I kind of like moved to the opposite side and he stopped grabbing. I remember talking to the 911 operator. If anybody's seen those Halloween Michael Myers movies, we had this, I still remember the exact knife set. It was a Jinsu knife set, stainless steel. I remember he grabbing the biggest chef knife. Like I said, I am a cook, so the big chef knives that you use to cut like cabbage and meat with. He grabbed it out and ran into the living room and went to attack my mother. I dropped the phone, ran in there. Me and him fought the knife, trying to fight the knife away. I ended up with 13 stitches in my hand. I still have those scars on my right hand. Fought one knife away and then was able to disperse of it. And like I said, my mom was a very courageous woman. She told me to protect me. Like, she was basically trying to sacrifice her life for me. And she told me to run into the master bedroom and grab the other phone and basically shut the door and like protect myself. So I ran in the room, grabbed the phone. The smart thing I was able to do was the phone I dropped in the kitchen, I left it. I didn't hang up. So the 911 was able to triangulate the call, get the location. Police were already en route, and they were able to actually listen to everything that was transpiring. And so ran in the room, got the phone, continued talking to the 911 operator, and then I heard him go back in the kitchen and grab another knife. And so this knife was the serrated blade you used to cut blade, the real long one, where you used to cut bread. And so he ran back in there. So then I just said, forget it. I'm going to go back and save my mom. That's my mom. So ran back in there. I remember he had the chef's knife. He was positioned on her like a full mount, like in UFC, like martial arts. And he was actually about to stab her in the neck. And I was on the floor next to him. And my mom had, like, you had those, the glass living room tables. She had 3 things on the table. She had a big vase, and I remember it was a very distinct, it was a glass cheetah print high heel. Never seen it before, never seen it again. So I was laying on the floor. I knew if I didn't do something that he would basically stab her in the neck. Obviously, that'd be pretty much an instant kill. So I remember it was a big, long, like African style vase. I remember grabbing the neck with one hand, using all the force I had and cracking it over his head. It was that one shot was able to stagger him, almost knock him out, and then drop the knives. She was able to move out the way so it didn't hit her. And then that's when the police rushed in. The police detained him and got me and my mom to the ambulance. My mom ended up having 130 stitches in her left arm. Also had some nerve damage. So luckily it wasn't severe enough to amputate. She did have to do like 6+ months of rehab, but she does get occasional soreness, but she was able to use that same arm as normal. And so I remember
Darion, hold on, bro. Pause for a second. First of all, I need to I'm clapping for you, brother.
Right.
You saved not only your life, but your mother's life.
And that was
amazing. Is a fantastic thing. And I'm not trying to make light of your situation. You have a phenomenal story. But I just wanted to commend you, brother. I'm sitting inside and I don't even know your dad. I'm not, I'm fuming. And I know it's in the past. I know that's history right now, but I'm fuming. I just want to commend you because I've had to do something similar for a family member before, and it wasn't the same type of situation, but I just felt the instinct to jump in and help. It wasn't my mother. It was an aunt, but I felt that I needed to help in that situation. She had a boyfriend that was, doing the same thing basically. So I want to commend you, brother. I just had to take a pause to do that. Go ahead and finish your story.
No, I appreciate it. But yeah, so I remember riding in the ambulance, and again, during this whole situation, I really can't see. I didn't have my contacts in, so
Contacts, no glasses.
Right. So, I saw everything. And so that's what really, like, when I go back to like the story of seeing like his eyes turn black, one, your vision's blurry, but like,
Yeah.
You see something like that, it's like, whoa, I guess I don't need glasses, but I see, I got them on still. So yeah, I still need the glasses.
Right.
But,
did something trigger him? Was there something that happened, or was he on anything? Was this a shock to your mom? Because as you were talking earlier, I was wondering if there were things going on that your mom kept from you and your sister.
Mm-hmm.
So was there something that triggered him?
I will say like a couple of weeks before that, he had hit her once, but mostly it was just like the realization of like going back. And if you're viewing this, like I said, if you're in a domestic situation, the best advice I can give you is seek higher counsel and get out. Because once you enable somebody, I think and then me and my mom have talked about this before, and she always tells, especially my younger sister, this going back, my mom always says like one of the biggest mistakes she made was keep taking them back. And so if you're viewing and you're in a situation where you keep taking them back, like I do want to tell the viewers, one, that person's never going to change. Only God can change that person. And so you can't change another human. And so what really triggered it was the realization of, oh, this woman's serious this time. Like, yeah, we're getting a divorce. I think what triggered was he kind of saw, because, when we were younger, we were 8, 9, 10, we didn't know. But like, I was 14, my sister was 11. So we already kind of know what divorce is. We're already kind of, when you're a teenager, you're already aware. Yeah. So we kind of like accepted the fact that, okay, we'll probably see him on the weekends and a weekday, the normal court ordered, or, he probably, pick us up from school or, on Fridays or, some sort of, so I think it was the realization of my mom's, like I said, my mom's very meticulous with her bills. Like she's very organized. So like the whole family, including, and even his, like people at church already knew about it. So it wasn't like oh wow, you guys are getting a divorce. Like his mom knew, the whole church knew, like, they were going to counseling, like they, this was like, hey, this is the final decision, we're getting a divorce. So and then that's why I want to tell the viewers, like after that last time with the carpet burn, like if she would have never let him back, it probably wouldn't have happened. Like, and then I also want to tell people, viewers out there, watch for those red flags, to me, honestly, just being a survivor and talking to other people and, just being, growing survivors, honestly, like in any relationship, there's that uncrossable line, whether it be, like if you're in a relationship and you have a parent that's passed away, if you're dating somebody and they talk bad about your dead parent, that should be uncrossable. Putting your hands on each other, that should be across. Certain profane words should be, an uncrossable. So I do want to tell the viewers, watch for those red flags. And then if they do something that's like, one of those unforgivable, like uncrossable things, and it's time to, hey, I know we thought we had something going on, but it's time to, mutually part ways.
Let me ask you, growing up, did you notice that, like you said, in the earlier years, they were struggling financially? So did you notice that the violence was more so then? And did it kind of slack off when they started making more money? Or was it just a continuum thing?
Or do you think it was easier for mom to kind of hide things?
Right.
So one question, I know I did mention her losing all that weight. So he had that one instance when I was real young at 4, But like I said, at this point, when I was in my, as a toddler, she was about, 300 plus pounds. So, her self-esteem was lower.
Wow.
Obviously he was the breadwinner, even though we were struggling. And so he had like that one incident, but it was more of at that point, he had more of that like emotional, psychological control. But
Okay.
cause she actually, when she moved to Rock 10 and we moved to the big house, she actually started making more money than him. Like there were more levels.
Yeah.
So I think
Right.
she made, I don't know the exact wage, but I think she was making a little bit more than him. And then on top of that, she lost all that weight. So then her confidence was getting stronger on herself. So it was like,
mama was making more money.
right,
She got a little finer.
Yeah.
She was
right.
more attention.
And then you want the divorce. So it's like, dang, like it was like that need for you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to when you were talking about those things that cross lines you don't come back from. My thing is, if you're in a relationship with someone and you ever feel fearful, that's to me a red flag.
Yes.
I have never felt afraid of him. Now, I know we've had probably about 5 arguments that were big blowout arguments, and I can be a bit feisty. I know the moment when I cross a line and when it's time for me to step back. But even in those situations, I didn't feel fearful for my safety. I knew I crossed the line, I need to stop. But for me, anytime you're with someone, if you fear your safety, that's a definite red flag.
Yes, definitely.
Right. And I think that was the time with the carpet burn, because like I said, none of us was home. And I think that was like where she realized, like, okay, like that's where that kind of fear came to life. Like, all right, so this dude's really crazy. Like, he really crazy.
Right.
But the thing about it is, even with that situation, I mean, I don't understand dudes who hit women. I'm the type of guy that if I hear about a friend or family member hitting on a woman, I don't mess with them. I mean, I'm totally done with them. So, I mean, he had to have. I'm just trying to figure out the mindset of a man like that, and not trying to judge him. I'm just saying anybody. But the thing about it is, I understand that as men struggle, you have situations that happen, and you feel like you want to just come on, and take it out on something or somebody, but that's a part of control. But I think he had control in the beginning, and when he started feeling like he was losing control and losing power, he felt like he had to assert himself. And I don't understand it by no means, but I see that thing happen. That's one thing that happens with me in these situations. Go ahead, brother. Go. I'm sorry.
Right, definitely. No, yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, like you just said, to any viewers listening, they always say pride comes before the fall of man. So you want to make sure. A lot of people talk on my podcast. I also talk about trauma bonding. If you're in a relationship out there, make sure it's not a situationship, or make sure it's in for the right reasons. If you're only with him or her for the money or for the status, reevaluate. Because life can strike at any time. If let's say he was a professional athlete and he's a millionaire, well, if he gets hurt or cut or can't play no more, what's the lifestyle? What's the backup plan? Also, I do want to talk to the women out there viewing. I just want, if you're a domestic violence survivor, or you're, survived your situation, you're still going through your situation, I want you to know that, your voice matters and that you have your own power. I witnessed myself with my mom, just with my story, like I said, I'm a big mama's boy, but I didn't know my mom until after this situation happened. My mom, growing up, like I said, she'd been working since she was 14. She loved to write poetry. She loved to rap. She was actually really won awards with poetry and rap, before I was born. But she ended up getting pregnant with me at 21 years of age. If you were a Christian out there, the out of wedlock thing, she kind of got not necessarily forced to marry my dad, but it was like frowned upon because,
Yeah.
the firstborn, like, hey, you're in Pentecostal church,
Right.
you're a member, he's, especially with them being members of the church, and he's a musician in the church. Back then it was frowned upon to, have children out of wedlock. So, and she's already, he's 1 year older than her. So he was 22, she was 21. So it's like, hey, as young kids, you guys got pregnant, you guys need to get married. And so they ended up doing that. And then, one thing I do want to say to viewers is, if you do get married or get in a relationship, don't let what your ambitions are stop because you're in a relationship.
Yes.
Any relationship should enhance
Yes.
what you're, so if he's, writing music, or he's a chef, or if he's trying to go to school to be a doctor, and you're trying to go to school to be a lawyer, when you merge together in union, that should be a supplement to each other instead of taken away. So, if anybody hinders your growth, that's one, you need to talk to God, but also that's somebody that, also have a conversation with yourself. So like I said, if you're a woman out there going through this situation, I always tell people seek higher counsel. If you want a successful marriage, you need to talk to people with a successful marriage.
Yes.
They do say that the five people that you hang around the most you're the sum of them.
Yep.
Another good quote I heard off a sports podcast, and they were talking about sports, but this is a good judge of character for any man or woman out there viewing. Colin Coherent, he's a sports analyst, so like I said, I won't copyright his quote. So that's copyrighted. But he said, if you take someone's best day and you take someone's worst day and you cancel them out, every day in between is who they are.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
I like
And
that.
so, again, I'll say that for the viewers. If you're in a relationship, especially, take your man or woman, take your spouses or your significant others, take their worst thing they ever done to you, take the best thing they ever done to you, or the best way they've treated you, the worst way they treated you, cancel them out. Every day you guys spent together since then, that's who they are. And so, I just want definitely something to think about as you're viewing the podcast here. And to go back to the domestic violence story again, like I rode in the ambulance to the hospital. I just remember, be laying on the hospital bed, and I used to watch CSI, Law and Order growing up, still watch Law and Order. But I remember all the people, the crime scene people, taking pictures of my hand, taking pictures of my face for the evidence. That was the first time I'd really felt like somberness. It wasn't even like I was in shock, so it wasn't like a anger, it wasn't like a hatred. At that point, it was just, when you're a nurse, I'm getting rushed in, she's getting rushed in, separate. We go our separate ways. I go to the teenage wing. She's an adult, like she's in ER because, with the blood loss. So she's in a, emergency, like they're trying to work, do the surgery, do whatever fast. I just remember the nurse. It was like, well, I can't remember the nurse's name. She was a sweet lady, but she just asked what happened to me. She said, if you don't mind me asking, what happened? Because, like I said, I just had the hand bleeding. I had some scars on my face. So she's thinking, maybe I fell or maybe I got in a fight, but I told her what happened. And then she said, who did this to you? I said, my father. And I just remember her face just being like shocked, like, what? And then so, that situation happened. My granddad in Indiana, her, my grandma, and then my aunts, because they all lived in Columbus, Indiana. They drove. So Indiana's about a 3.5 hour drive from Lexington. So they literally drove. They actually were at the hospital within 2 hours of us getting there. He literally jumped in the van. Yeah. They packed a little quick bag and came down. I remember them. My mom got out of surgery. Everything went successful. She had the cast. We got driven home by, my grandparents and them. Honestly, getting back home was probably the worst part of the actual situation. Because, and like I said, I watched all the CSIs, Law and Orders. I always studied forensic science in school. And so, it didn't really hit me until we came back home and we had to, it's going to sound weird, but we had to clean up our own house.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like, it's just, and so what's crazy is my little sister has no idea what's going on. Nobody has no idea. It's literally, and we made the news. We were the top story on the news for about 3 weeks straight.
Oh, wow.
So my neighbors, my grandma's watching it, they're watching. So his mom watching the news, like, what is this?
Oh, man.
It was to the point my uncle, he watched the news. So he saw my sister run in the room with, I found this out later. He had to hurry up and turn it off. Because, it showed me and my mom and address. It showed the house. It showed the police taping it off. And it showed, they were interviewing my neighbors. And so, this was like, it wasn't like a, whatever. It was like a big deal because, like I said, my family, they're well respected, in the community. Yeah, the worst part was cleaning up the house. Just seeing like my first like realization was when I walked in the front door, seeing all the blood on the floor, all the broken shards from the vase. And then I went into my room and I saw where I had dragged the blood, like it was dripping from my hand to like my bedspread. And then obviously my granddad and them helped, obviously my mom didn't clean up because, she was hurt. But I remember my family, they told us to sit down and they, helped clean everything up. And then just sitting there, like watching them clean it up, I was, like I said, I was in shock for about a week. And then again, you got to think, being on TV, all my, we're on Thanksgiving break, in school. So, all my friends at school, they're watching the news, watching, back then, that's when smartphones first started. That's when the iPhones really, started booming. So, it wasn't like back in the day where, you had to turn the radio and, everything that was when like the internet first, Twitter, I think it was, Twitter was first started getting hot, and then Facebook was real big back then. That's when Facebook first started. So everybody's like calling the house phone,
oh, man.
trying to, wanting to talk. Obviously, we don't want to talk because, we just went through that's the last thing I want to do is talk. The whole family trying to get in touch with us and come over. So another thing I want to say is another like error that my mom had made is, when you get married, don't let one spouse's or one significant other side of the family like take control of the whole family. I say that by saying so my granddad would visit every Christmas from Indiana. So I'd obviously talk to him. So like my uncle Robert in Chicago, again, he would send me birthday and Christmas every year. I knew he would talk to him, but never seen him in person because they lived in Illinois. And that's on my mom's side because, my dad's side dominated my whole childhood. My mom talked to her family, and even all the family that lived in Kentucky, my mom kept up with them and talked to them, but we never actually, all the church events and everything was my dad's side. So, from a 14-year-old, I'm meeting all these people for the first time. Cousins, aunts, uncles. I think I met like 4 or 5 aunts, uncles that I never met before. My uncle and my aunt, they drove from Illinois as soon as they heard what happened. So that was like a 6-7 hour drive that they took the drive. They ended up coming over late that night. All my aunts that lived in Kentucky, they came. My sister didn't come till the next day once everything was all cleaned up.
Yeah.
So she didn't come over till the next morning. Yeah, and it was just like, one, you're shell shocked, shocked from the situation, but also it's like, who are these, random, not random people, but it's like, who are, I don't even know who Aunt Jaquita is, who's Aunt Jaquita? I wish we were meeting on better terms,
Not to say it's good that you have people who want to come and they want to love on you, but they don't really know you.
I know part of you was probably like,
right. I'm like, where was you? Right. Where y'all been at? My whole, and I was, 14, my sister was 11. So I was like, and then so after everything got cleaned up, obviously I couldn't sleep. The next day, everybody decided to do family breakfast at Cracker Barrel. I remember not eating for 5 days, like nothing. And then the day after, we all had to go to Cracker Barrel. And I remember, only thing I remember about Cracker Barrel is I broke down crying at the table. And then that was like, I was like, I don't want to, eat.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember we had to throw all the Thanksgiving food away because my mom would cook her Thanksgiving for the 4 of us. And then we'd do the family dinner where we bring a dish. So like all the food that she had cooked, the night before Thanksgiving, and on Thanksgiving, we threw away, obviously, because the three of us wasn't eating. And so, I just remember that Cracker Barrel. I was like, man, I really don't want to eat.
Right.
Right. Not necessarily, nothing wrong. I love Cracker Barrel, but just not at the...
You're still traumatized. You're still like
right.
trying to process waking up. You wake up to that situation.
Right.
The hospital, the new family.
Right.
Right.
You had a lot to process.
Right.
At 14, I'm 48 now, and I probably couldn't process half of that. And at 14, you're trying to process all this going on.
I think the difference would be, as an adult, you can verbalize.
Yeah.
I can't process this, and people will respect it.
Right.
But as a child, even if you're letting them know, I'm not ready for all of this, they're going to think, well, I know what's best. I'm sure
you had an uncle or aunt telling me, boy, you need to eat something, go and eat something.
Right. Yeah, growing boy.
Yeah. Boy, you need to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to grow, but right now,
I got something going on.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then the last part of that story is going back to school the next week.
Yes.
It was just like that whole rest of that school year. It was just like a somber, like, it almost felt like your own funeral. Like, that's the best I could describe it. It was like you're like invisible, but you're too like I walked on the bus and everybody's like, it's like the opposite of, you think that, and I say this to the viewers, because you think that like you want that like to be seen, or that celebrity type status, but it was more of like, I remember these are some of my best friends, and like the most hurtful part is they all knew my dad.
Right.
These are the same kids that would come over after school and play. They played basketball with them, and I had a best friend named Tony. He would, come over and spend the night. Play video games all night, talk about girls. Do the teenage boy stuff. My dad would buy pizza and give us soda, and we used to get Krispy Kreme donuts. So these are people that knew my dad for years.
They had a relationship with him also. Yeah.
Right. So they're like, they're just shocked. Like, I thought, and like I said, look, like, to preface the story, they're thinking, you got the coolest parents ever,
Right.
Y'all got money, y'all, you got the basketball court, you always got food, you're well dressed every day, you got the haircut every other week. And I just remember walking to the school, coming back that first day, and I think they took me straight to the counselor's office. The hardest part about the situation was like, people, like, obviously you want help, but it's like, leave me alone. Like,
right.
Yeah,
it was like too much help. Like,
all right. It's like,
right.
And then like
you're right. Yes. For the last.
And then I learned to hate the word "I'm sorry." Like, I just still to this day, it's just like,
those are situations like
they
that.
They are.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
Just like, I'm sorry for you, or I'm sorry what happened, or I'm like, it's just like one of those, like, you're just looking for something to say. But I know it's from the right spot in the heart, so that's why I never really had, got paid too much attention. But it's just one of those, like, okay, if I don't know, and I went to a big high school. I think it was like 3,000 plus in the high school. So, imagine, 2,500 kids, they all saw you on the news.
Right.
Every class, and then it was like, and I was on a football team too. So,
wow. Yeah.
it's like coaches, like counselors, and I was on the I think I did the FBLA, so I was in a couple clubs too.
Yeah.
And I used to sell candy bars, and so people like knew me, and then it was like that sense of, you're looked at like the victim, like you're literally like, everybody's being extra nice to you you, like, it's like if you ever seen that movie, The Truman Show, it's kind of like that, like, you're living a show in your own life, but you're still like living.
Like it's not even realistic. Right.
Right.
Going through motions.
Yeah, people buying you stuff, or I think my the teachers sending my mom cards and just stuff. But I will say they helped my mom get Christmas for us. They helped a lot of they're very supportive, people during the process. Like I said, ended up moving to Indiana. My grandparents at the time lived in Columbus. So my mom was able to get an apartment in Indiana. So also with the story, again, with it, it's obviously it changed my life forever, not only with the situation, but again, I didn't, the only thing I knew about Indiana at the time was the Colts and the Pacers. That's it.
Yeah.
So one, you're getting uprooted from your whole family that because like I said, my whole dad's side of the family, in Kentucky mostly. One, I just met these people when I, almost died. And then, now you gotta, some of them are still here. So you build those relationships and you gotta go back.
I'm sure that her family had a lot of emotion to voice about the situation.
Yes.
So you're trying to process things as a teenager, knowing that this is your father. And I know that her family, your mom's family, didn't have a lot of good to say about him, I'm sure. So just trying to deal with all of that, that's a lot for an adult. So I couldn't even imagine as a 14-year-old.
Wow. Yeah, okay. How long of a time from you guys getting back and meeting the family to you guys moving to Indiana?
So I got back to the hospital November 28th, November the 27th, that Black Friday. Finished the school year out in May, and then we moved a week after the school year ended. She had some family friends that helped us move everything to Indiana. She was able to get a 3-bedroom townhome in Greenwood, Indiana, which is about 40 minutes from my grandparents.
Okay.
Got us registered, and so that was a really quick turnaround. So I literally had obviously still trying to go and process through everything, but basically had, I want to say, a week to say goodbye to everybody, trying to plan, all the literally that I think we left 2 weeks after school ended. So literally right after school ended. Yeah.
Also, if you mind sharing, what were the results as far as your father, and also going from that point to moving away? Are you still communicating with his family members, or how's your relationship with him now?
So first answer to the question. So when he did the carpet thing, he got a domestic violence order with the court. So he violated DVO. He got all this. When we went to Indiana, all this, the court case was still going on. So at first he didn't want to plead. So we were going to have to go all the way back to Kentucky and do court. So we were I was preparing to have to see him face to face again, in courtroom while I was in Indiana. And then he ended up, his lawyer ended up talking him into the plea deal. So he pleaded guilty. He had assault for my mom, 3rd degree for me since I'm a minor, violation of domestic violence. So he ended up getting, I think it was 15 to 20, but he got out on 10 years in good behavior. So he got out in 2019. I talked to him once since then, but haven't since. To this day, he still didn't apologize, didn't still the same person. No, actually he sent me a long text message a week after he got out. I remember it because it was back when I had my own marketing business. I was actually about to do a presentation. I looked at my phone, saw the text from his, it was an unknown 859 number. That's the Kentucky area code. It was him. I remember reading the message, and then 2 minutes later, the guy in the meeting calling me up to speak. So I didn't even have time to process what he had said. But basically the text just read you'll need me one day. More of a prideful, alpha male. No remorse, no sorry for what happened. This is what happened. This is my situation. This is what I was going through. No kind of reconciliation. So, and then also his mother. So I still talk to her occasionally, but so again, like I told you earlier, my mom's mom died when I was 2.
Okay.
So I remember, and my mom didn't want to tell. She ended up telling me this years later, because obviously I was too young at the time to she didn't want to put me against my family. But I remember, so his mom had sent my mom a letter, and I remember her like talking about my mom's dead mom in the letter. And so like I still talk to her, you know, for the sake of, you know, the twins, you know, her having the great grandkids. But outside of that, I did go back to Kentucky, like before he had got out of jail, to visit just a family, like my mom's side of family. And I did go back to the church and visit with my grandmother and kind of talk through things. And so we're on like decent, you know, like ground. So we're all cordial.
Okay.
But we are cordial now, but not like a like everyday. But yeah, his side of the family, like most of his side of the family, we're all good friends, like cousins. We're all, you know, well, the cousins, you know, they weren't a part of it, but like the aunts, uncles, his sister, I don't talk to still. Like she just doesn't talk to us. Like she's just always been a distant aunt, even for me and my sister.
Right.
And then, but yeah, I do talk to, you know, my grandmother, his mom, and then I actually, quick fun fact. So his dad, I found out, I didn't know so I never met my granddad ever from his dad. So
wow.
He, my grandma ended up getting, so I have an aunt Sharon that's his sister. I knew of her, but didn't, you know, I only met her once. So I ended up meeting my granddad for the first time when I went back to Kentucky in 2017, when I first had a twin. So I ended up meeting we had like a video call and stuff like that. So I ended up meeting him. But I also have a half sister through my dad. I didn't meet her. Me and my sister didn't meet her till we were 12.
Wow.
And then when he got out of jail, he ended up getting engaged to her mom.
Oh, wow.
But then they've since broken up too. So maybe she saw the same. So basically, he's literally like, he wears the same outfits he wore before he went to jail. Like, he's literally the same person, hadn't changed. So, like I said, I've had a phone conversation with him and a couple texts. Like, he wished me a happy Father's Day, but other than that, like, I don't associate with him. I don't talk to him. And then, what was the second question again? Sorry.
You pretty much answered the family and how you guys get along.
Oh, okay.
And what's happened with him, right?
Yeah.
All right. So and you've given tips throughout your story.
Yeah.
So one last tip, if there is a person who is in a situation, they have that fear, they don't know what's next. What's the one thing that you would tell them? If you had one thing that you could say to help make a difference, what would you tell them?
One tip I would say would be find somebody that has more knowledge than you in the situation. Like find an escape route, whether it's a pastor, if you're in church, whether it's a family member outside, find somebody that you can confide in and seek higher counsel on how to assess the situation. I think we get in our own way the most.
Right.
Always try to say find a neutral party, you know, even if it's like a friend who's, you know, outside of the family, like, I always try to, but then the caveat to that tip also is I do want to say, look at the results of who you're hanging around too. If you and like for women out there listening and viewing, if all your girlfriends ain't got a man, you know, maybe not, you know, like you can listen to everybody, but you know, take advice, but maybe that's not the person for your situation. And then same thing for men, you know, if all your homeboys ain't got a wife, you know, they might not be the best. So I've just always been cohort of just wisdom. So I would try to find somebody, if you're younger and you're viewing and going through it, I would try to find somebody older. And then if you're older going through it, I would try to find like a mix of between. So like maybe like more on the if you're in church, maybe a deaconess or an evangelist, somebody that, you know, you kind of like a first lady or somebody that, you know, you look up to that could guide you in the best direction. And definitely, like I said, just seek higher counsel.
I can tell you that I know in our earlier years, I had some brothers from the church that I grew close to, and they had positions in the church, but you know they were like, I guess you want to call them trustees. It was a small church, but I drew close to them, and these guys were older than me, and they had been married for, you know, at least over 10 years, and I saw how they were with their spouses. And I was like, man, I need to get close to them brothers to find out what I need to know to be, a man. You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
I respected them. And that helped me. Talking to them brothers really just helped me understand, okay, yeah, even though you're a Christian man, you still had the same, vices. You still had that same fight. And that also helped me to, mature in myself. Because I say, okay, well, brother such and such is doing it, then okay, then I need to seek advice from him. So I'll ask him, hey man, what you think about this situation? So that you're right.
And
Wisdom
another
from right people, yes.
the quote that you said about the people that you're around, shout out to Mama's friend that first time who was on the phone and who called 911.
Yes.
Because you have some people who have that stay out of things mentality or what have you. But and Mama could have at that time thought, no, I'm not going to call at this point to get the police involved. But because of your mom's friend doing that, that paved the way for him to make sure that he received that consequence the second time. So that's the type of people that I want around me that are going to act in a situation. So shout out to Mama's friend because that ended up helping in the long run.
Whew. Oh man. you got a story, brother.
Yes, you do.
Wow.
And so thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
for
Oh man.
We're gonna move into our let's discuss it topic. And that one I'm excited about also.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode with our special guest. Please join us for part 2 with our exciting guests on the next episode of the Beyond I Do podcast.